A faint sound beneath the roar of an engine, a father who refused to ignore it, and a CEO who was about to lose everything. When a single father living paycheck to paycheck notices something wrong with an aircraft no expert can explain, he's pulled into the world of a brilliant young CEO, fighting to save her collapsing company. What he uncovers will force her to choose between protecting her reputation and trusting a stranger who sees what no one else can. This is a story about instinct, trust, and the cost of being right when everyone else wants you to be wrong. If you're watching from your city right now, drop a comment and let me know where this story reaches. I want to see how far it goes. And if you stay until the end, hit that like button. Let's begin. The airfield sat on the edge of town like a forgotten promise. Chain link fencing sagged under rust and weather, and the tarmac stretched out in broken patches where weeds had started their slow reclamation. It wasn't the kind of place that saw much traffic anymore, just the occasional charter flight or cargo run, things that didn't require the polish of a real airport. Liam Carter had never paid much attention to it before. He passed it every morning on his way to drop his son off at school, the same route he'd driven for 3 years, the same view out the window that had become part of the background noise of his life. But that morning, something was different. He slowed the truck at the intersection, waiting for the light to change. His son, Ben, sat in the passenger seat with his backpack wedged between his knees, earbuds in, staring at his phone. 8 years old and already more interested in a screen than the world outside. Liam didn't blame him. The world outside didn't offer much. Through the fence, Liam could see a small jet taxiing toward the runway. It was sleek, modern, painted white with a logo he didn't recognize. The engines roared as it turned, and the sound filled the cab of the truck, a deep, powerful hum that vibrated through the steering wheel. And underneath it, something else. Liam frowned. He tilted his head slightly, listening. There it was again. A faint, irregular sound, like a rattle buried beneath the engine noise. It wasn't loud. Most people wouldn't have noticed it at all. But Liam had spent years working in auto repair before the shop closed down, and his ear had been trained to catch the things that didn't belong. A belt about to snap, a bearing grinding itself to dust, the little warnings that came before the big failures. The jet picked up speed and lifted into the air, climbing smoothly into the gray morning sky. The sound faded. The light turned green. Liam pressed the gas and moved forward, but the unease stayed with him. "Dad." He glanced over. Ben had pulled out one earbud and was looking at him with that expression kids get when they've said something twice and you haven't heard them. "Yeah, buddy?" "I said I need lunch money." Liam reached into his pocket and pulled out a crumpled $10 bill. "That's all I got right now. Make it last." Ben took it without comment and stuffed it into his backpack. He didn't complain. He never did. That was the worst part. Liam pulled up to the school and watched Ben climb out, slinging his backpack over one shoulder. "Have a good day," Liam called after him. Ben raised a hand without turning around and disappeared through the front doors. Liam sat there for a moment, engine idling, staring at nothing in particular. The gas gauge hovered just above empty. Rent was due in 4 days, and he was already 2 weeks behind. He had a job interview that afternoon, warehouse work, 3rd shift, and he knew he'd take it if they offered, even though the pay was garbage, and the hours would mean seeing even less of Ben than he already did. He put the truck in gear and headed toward the diner where he worked mornings. Coffee refills and breakfast plates and the same tired faces every day. It wasn't much, but it was something. The sound from the airfield nagged at him all morning. But Ava Bennett stood in the center of the hangar, arms crossed, staring at the disassembled turbine laid out on the work table like a body on an autopsy slab. Around her, a team of engineers moved with the tense efficiency of people who'd been working nonstop for days and still had no answers. "Anything?" she asked. David Ortiz, her lead engineer, looked up from the component he'd been inspecting. He was in his 50s, gray-haired and sharp-eyed, the kind of man who'd spent his whole career around aircraft and didn't suffer fools. "Nothing," he said flatly. "Compression's fine. Fuel flow's clean. Bearings are intact. There's no structural damage, no foreign object ingestion. It's like the damn thing just decided to stop working." Ava exhaled slowly. "That's the 3rd one this month." "I know. The FAA is going to ground us if we can't explain this." "I know that too." She turned away and walked toward the hangar doors, where morning light spilled across the concrete floor. Outside, 2 more jets sat idle on the tarmac, grounded pending inspection. Her company, Aeropulse Aviation, had been her entire life for the past 4 years. She'd built it from nothing, scraping together investors and engineers, and a vision for lightweight, fuel-efficient aircraft that could revolutionize regional travel. She'd been 24 when she started. She'd been called naive, reckless, too young. She'd proven them all wrong, until now. Now the engines were failing, and no one could tell her why. Flights were being canceled. Investors were asking questions she couldn't answer. The press was starting to circle, and she was running out of time. Her phone buzzed. She pulled it out and saw a message from her CFO. Board meeting moved up to 2 p.m. They want answers. She typed back, "I don't have any yet." The response came immediately. "Then we're in trouble." Ava shoved the phone back into her pocket and walked outside. The airfield stretched out around her, quiet except for the distant hum of machinery. She'd mortgaged everything to build this place. Her savings, her credibility, her future. If Aeropulse went under, she wouldn't just lose the company. She'd lose everything. A gust of wind blew across the tarmac, scattering a few loose papers near the edge of the hangar. Ava watched them tumble across the pavement and catch against the fence, and that's when she saw him. A man stood just outside the perimeter fence near the access road. He was tall, lean, dressed in a faded jacket and work boots. He wasn't looking at the building or the jets. He was crouched down, examining something on the ground. Ava frowned. "Who the hell is that?" She walked toward this fence, close enough to see what he was doing. There was a piece of metal lying in the dirt. Looked like part of an engine cowling, probably blown off during a maintenance run and never picked up. The man was turning it over in his hands, running his fingers along the edges. "Hey!" Ava called out. The man looked up. He had dark hair, a few days' worth of stubble, and the kind of weathered face that came from too many early mornings and not enough sleep. He didn't look startled or guilty, just curious. "This is private property," Ava said. The man stood up slowly, still holding the piece of metal. "I know, sorry, I wasn't trying to—" He paused, glancing back down at the component in his hands. "Does this belong to you?" "Probably. Why?" He hesitated, then held it up so she could see it better. "There's scoring on the inside edge. Heat damage, maybe. And the metal's discolored here. See that? Looks like oxidation, but in a pattern, like it was exposed to something it shouldn't have been." Ava stared at him. "Who are you?" "Liam Carter. I live a few miles from here." He set the piece down carefully and stepped back from the fence. "I noticed one of your planes this morning. Sounded off." "Sounded off?" Ava repeated. "Yeah, there was a rattle underneath the engine noise, real faint, but it was there." Ava crossed her arms. "And you're telling me this because—" "Because I used to work on engines," Liam said. "Cars, mostly. But an engine's an engine. If something sounds wrong, it usually is." Ava glanced back toward the hangar, where David and the rest of the team were still tearing apart the turbine with no answers. She looked at Liam again. He didn't look like an engineer, he didn't look like anyone she'd hire, but there was something in the way he'd examined that piece of metal, methodical, careful, like he actually gave a damn. "Wait here," she said. She walked back to the hangar and grabbed David. "There's a guy outside the fence, says he heard something wrong with one of the jets this morning." David looked at her like she'd lost her mind. "A guy outside the fence? Yeah. And you believe him? I don't know yet, but we've been staring at these engines for a week and we've got nothing. I'm willing to listen." David sighed. "Ava, we're not bringing some random guy off the street into, I'm not asking for permission," Ava said. "I'm telling you what's happening." She turned and walked back outside before he could argue. Liam was still standing by the fence, hands in his pockets, waiting. "Come with me," Ava said. Liam blinked. "Seriously?" "Seriously, gate's around the side." She led him through the access gate and into the hangar. The moment they stepped inside, every head turned. David looked up from the workbench, his expression somewhere between disbelief and irritation. "This is Liam Carter," Ava said. "He's going to take a look at the turbine." One of the junior engineers, a woman named Jessica, laughed. "You're joking." "Do I look like I'm joking?" The laughter died. Liam stepped up to the workbench and looked down at the disassembled engine. He didn't touch anything at first. He just studied it, eyes moving over the components with the same careful attention he'd given the piece of metal outside. "What's the failure mode?" he asked. David crossed his arms. "Intermittent power loss during cruise. No warning, no pattern. Happens once every few flights, then corrects itself." Liam nodded slowly. "And you've checked fuel delivery?" "Of course." "Compression ratios?" "Yes." "What about the air intake?" David's jaw tightened. "We've checked everything." Liam reached out and picked up one of the compressor blades, holding it up to the light. "This edge is pitted." "That's normal wear," David said. "Maybe. But if it's happening unevenly, it could be throwing off the airflow. You get enough turbulence in the compression stage and the engine starts choking on its own exhaust." Jessica leaned forward. "That doesn't explain the intermittent failure." "No," Liam agreed, "but it might explain why you're not seeing it in the diagnostics. If the problem's in the airflow dynamics, it won't show up in a static test. You'd have to see it under load." Ava looked at David. "Can we test that?" David didn't answer right away. He was staring at Liam with an expression that was hard to read, part skepticism, part something else. Finally, he said, "We can run a bench test with simulated load conditions, but it'll take time." "How much time?" 4 hours. Maybe 5. "Do it," Ava said. David opened his mouth, then closed it. He nodded. "Fine." The team went to work. Liam stayed close, watching as they reassembled the turbine and connected it to the test rig. He didn't try to take over, didn't push his ideas too hard. He just watched, asked questions, and occasionally pointed something out. Ava stood off to the side, arms crossed, trying to figure out what the hell she was doing. She didn't know this man. She had no reason to trust him. But there was something about the way he looked at the engine, like he saw past the metal and the mechanics to the thing underneath, the invisible problem no one else had noticed. She pulled out her phone and checked the time. The board meeting was in 3 hours. "Ava." She looked up. David was standing by the test rig, his face unreadable. "We're ready," he said. Ava walked over. The turbine was mounted on the rig, hooked up to a dozen sensors and diagnostic tools. On the monitor, a readout showed RPM, fuel flow, temperature, pressure, everything. "Start it up," Ava said. The engine roared to life. The sound filled the hangar, deep and powerful. The readouts climbed. Everything looked normal. "Increase load," David said. The operator adjusted the controls. The engine's pitch changed, the sound deepening as the load increased. And then, there. A flicker on the pressure readout, just for a second. Then it stabilized. "Did you see that?" Liam said. David leaned in. "Run it again." They cycled the load up and down. Every time they hit a specific range, the pressure dropped. Just a fraction. But it was there. "Airflow disruption," Liam said quietly. "Just like I thought." Jessica pulled up the sensor data on her tablet. "He's right. There's a resonance pattern in the intake. It's destabilizing the compression cycle." David stared at the screen. Then he looked at Liam. "Where the hell did you learn to spot that?" Liam shrugged. "I told you. I worked on engines." Ava stepped forward. "Can we fix it?" David hesitated. "If we redesign the intake geometry, maybe. But that's not a quick fix. We're talking about retooling, testing, certification. I didn't ask how long it would take," Ava said. "I asked if we can fix it." David met her eyes. "Yeah, we can fix it." Ava nodded. She turned to Liam. "Thank you." Liam looked uncomfortable. "I didn't do much." "You did more than you know." She paused. "What do you do for work?" "Right now, I wait tables. I've got an interview this afternoon for a warehouse job." Ava studied him for a moment. "Cancel it." Liam blinked. "What?" "Cancel the interview. I'm offering you a job." The hangar went quiet. Everyone was staring. "You don't even know me," Liam said. "I know you saw something no one else did. I know you were right. That's enough." Liam shook his head slowly. "I'm not an engineer. I don't have a degree. I can't—" "I don't need another engineer," Ava said. "I need someone who thinks differently, someone who asks the right questions." She stepped closer. "I'm not asking you to run the company. I'm asking you to help me save it." Liam looked down at the turbine, then back at Ava. "I've got a kid. I can't just... I'll pay you what you're worth, Ava said, and I'll make sure the hours work for you. Liam was quiet for a long time. Then he said, Why? Because I'm out of options, Ava said. And because I think you might be the only person in this room who actually gives a damn about getting it right. Liam met her eyes. There was something there, doubt, maybe, or disbelief. But underneath it, something else. Hope. Okay, he said quietly. I'll do it. Ava exhaled. She hadn't realized she'd been holding her breath. Good, she said. Welcome to Aeropulse. David stepped forward. Ava, can I talk to you for a second? She followed him to the far side of the hangar, out of earshot. Are you serious right now? David said. You're hiring some guy off the street because he heard a noise? He didn't just hear a noise, Ava said. He identified the problem we've been chasing for 2 weeks. Once. He got lucky once. Maybe. Or maybe he's actually good at this. David shook his head. You're taking a hell of a risk. I've been taking risks since the day I started this company, Ava said. This one doesn't scare me. David looked at her for a long moment. Then he sighed. Just be careful. You're betting a lot on a guy you don't know. I know, Ava said, but right now he's the only bet I've got. She walked back to where Liam was standing. He still looked like he wasn't sure this was real. Come on, Ava said. I'll show you around. As they left the hangar, the sun broke through the clouds for the first time that day, casting long shadows across the tarmac. Ava didn't know if this was the right decision. She didn't know if Liam Carter was the answer to her problems, or just another mistake in a long line of them. But for the first time in weeks, she felt like maybe, just maybe, she wasn't facing this alone. Behind them, David watched them go. Then he turned back to the turbine and muttered, This is going to end badly. Jessica looked up from her tablet. You think? I know, David said. But maybe that's what we need. He didn't explain what he meant. He didn't have to. Sometimes the only way forward was to break everything first, and Ava Bennett had just invited someone in who knew exactly how to do that. You said, Kiểm tra số thu vừa viết. Nếu chưa đủ viết tiếp đủ số từ yêu cầu 6.500 đến 7.000 cho tôi. Kiểm tra số từ vừa viết. Nếu chưa đủ viết tiếp đủ số từ yêu cầu 6.500 đến 7.000 cho tôi ngày 5 tháng 5, Claude responded, Let me check the word count of part 1 I just wrote. Let me check the word count of part 1 I just wrote. The current part 1 is approximately 3,200 words, which is significantly short of the required 6,500 to 7,000 words. I'll continue writing to meet the target word count. Shatit. Part 1. Continued. The office Ava led him to was smaller than Liam expected. He'd pictured something sleek and modern, all glass and steel, but this was just a converted storage room with a desk, 2 chairs, and a window that looked out over the tarmac. Papers were stacked everywhere. Blueprints, reports, scattered notes in handwriting he couldn't read. Sorry about the mess, Ava said, clearing a chair. I don't spend much time in here. Liam sat down. Where do you spend your time? Out there. She nodded toward the hangar. With the work. He believed her. There was grease under her fingernails, and her shirt had a smudge on the shoulder that looked like it came from leaning against something in the shop. She wasn't the kind of CEO who stayed behind a desk. Ava pulled a folder from one of the stacks and opened it. Before we go any further, I need to be honest with you about what you're walking into. Okay. This company is dying, she said flatly. We've had 3 engine failures in the last month. No fatalities, thank God, but we've lost client confidence. The FAA is breathing down our neck. Half my investors want out. And if we can't solve this problem in the next 2 weeks, we're done. Liam watched her face as she spoke. There was no sugarcoating, no attempt to make it sound better than it was. Just the truth, laid out bare. Why 2 weeks? He asked. That's when the certification review happens. If we can't prove the fleet is safe, they'll ground us permanently. She closed the folder. And if that happens, Aeropulse is finished. Liam leaned back in the chair. So what do you need from me? I need you to find what everyone else is missing, Ava said. David's brilliant, don't get me wrong, but he thinks like an engineer. Everything has to fit into a system, follow a process. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. And you think I'm different. I know you are. You saw something in 30 seconds that we missed in 2 weeks. She paused. But I'm not going to lie to you. This isn't going to be easy. The team doesn't trust you yet. They're going to push back. And if you're wrong, even once, they'll use it against you. And if I'm right? Ava smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Then maybe we all get to keep our jobs. Liam thought about Ben, about the rent he couldn't pay, about the interview he was supposed to go to in 3 hours. He thought about the sound he'd heard that morning, the rattle that everyone else had ignored. When do I start? He asked. Now, Ava said. If you're in all the way. Liam pulled out his phone and sent a quick text to the warehouse. Won't be able to make the interview. Sorry. Then he looked up at Ava. I'm in. She stood and extended her hand. Liam shook it. Her grip was firm, businesslike. Come on, she said. I'll introduce you to the rest of the team. The conference room was cramped, with a long table that took up most of the space and a whiteboard on one wall covered in equations and diagrams Liam didn't understand. 6 people sat around the table, all of them watching him with varying degrees of skepticism. Ava stood at the head of the table. Everyone, this is Liam Carter. He's joining the diagnostic team, effective immediately. A man in his 30s with thick-rimmed glasses spoke up. What's his background? Automotive repair, Ava said. The man blinked. You're joking. I'm not. Ava, we're trying to certify aircraft engines, not fix a Chevy. I know what we're trying to do, Marcus, Ava said evenly. And right now, Liam's the only one who's identified a viable failure mode. Marcus looked at Liam. The airflow disruption theory? Yeah, Liam said. That's not a new idea. We tested for intake turbulence weeks ago. Did you test it under variable load? Marcus hesitated. No. The diagnostics are designed for steady-state operation. Then you missed it, Liam said, because the problem only shows up when the load changes. Jessica, the engineer from earlier, leaned forward. He's right. We ran the bench test. The resonance pattern is clear. Marcus shook his head. One data point doesn't prove causation. No, Liam agreed, but it's a start. David, who'd been sitting quietly at the far end of the table, finally spoke. Liam, walk us through your thinking. How did you connect the sound you heard to an intake problem? Liam hesitated. He wasn't used to talking in front of groups, especially not people who clearly thought he didn't belong there. But Ava was watching him, waiting, and he'd already committed. The rattle was high frequency, he said. Not mechanical, nothing grinding or knocking. It sounded like air moving wrong, like a whistle, but inconsistent. In a car, that usually means there's a restriction somewhere in the intake or exhaust. Air's trying to move, but it's hitting resistance. And you extrapolated that to a jet engine, Marcus said. I didn't extrapolate anything. I just described what I heard. But you suggested it was an airflow problem, because that's what it sounded like, Liam said. Look, I'm not saying I know how your engines work. I don't. But sound doesn't lie. If something sounds wrong, there's a reason. David tapped his pen against the table. The issue is that we can't base an engineering analysis on subjective auditory observations. We need data. You have data now, Liam said. The bench test showed the pressure drop. One test, Marcus said, under controlled conditions. That doesn't mean it's happening in flight. Ava cut in. So we test it in flight. The room went quiet. You want to put an instrumented aircraft in the air, David said. I want to confirm the diagnosis, Ava said. We can't fix a problem we're not sure exists. Marcus shook his head. That's a huge risk. If the engine fails mid-flight, it won't, Liam said. Everyone turned to look at him. How do you know? Marcus asked. Because the failure mode is intermittent and self-correcting, Liam said. The pressure drops, the engine compensates, and it stabilizes. It's not catastrophic. It's just inefficient. You're basing that on what? On the fact that none of your planes have crashed. Marcus opened his mouth, then closed it. David leaned back in his chair, studying Liam. You're saying the engine's designed well enough that it's covering for the defect. Yeah, Liam said. The problem's real, but the system's robust. That's why you're not seeing total failures, just performance loss. Jessica was typing on her laptop. That actually makes sense. The control algorithms are designed to handle variable thrust conditions. If the compressor's delivering inconsistent pressure, the system would adjust fuel flow to compensate. Marcus still looked unconvinced. And if you're wrong? Liam met his eyes. Then I'm wrong. But sitting here arguing about it isn't going to get us any closer to an answer. Ava stood. We're doing the flight test. David, I want full telemetry on the engine, pressure, temperature, vibration, everything. Jessica, you'll monitor from the ground. Marcus, you're on data analysis. She looked at Liam. You'll be on the plane. Liam blinked. What? If this is your theory, you need to see it firsthand. I'm not a pilot. I've never even been on a private jet. You don't need to be a pilot, Ava said. You just need to listen. The plane was smaller than Liam expected, a six-seater with the back rows stripped out and replaced with monitoring equipment. Cables ran everywhere, connecting sensors to laptops and diagnostic tools. It looked more like a flying lab than an aircraft. The pilot, a woman in her 40s named Carmen, gave Liam a quick safety briefing. Seatbelt stays on unless I say otherwise. If I tell you to brace, you brace. If I tell you to jump, you ask how high on the way down. Got it? Got it, Liam said. Carmen looked him over. Ava says you're the guy who figured out what's wrong with my bird. Maybe. Maybe he's not good enough. These engines have been scaring the hell out of me for a month. Yeah, Liam said. Me too. Carmen nodded. All right, let's see if you're as smart as she thinks you are. She climbed into the cockpit. Liam strapped into one of the monitoring seats next to Jessica, who was already running through pre-flight checks on her laptop. Nervous? She asked. Terrified, Liam admitted. Jessica smiled. Good. That means you're paying attention. The engine started with a roar that vibrated through the entire fuselage. Liam's hands gripped the armrests. Through the window, he could see Ava standing on the tarmac, watching. Carmen's voice came through the intercom. Tower, this is Aeropulse 1, requesting clearance for test flight. A crackle of static, then a response Liam couldn't make out. Copy that. Rolling now. The plane lurched forward, picking up speed. Liam's stomach dropped as the ground fell away, and the aircraft climbed into the sky. Engine 1 looking good, Jessica said, eyes on her screen. Engine 2, so normal parameters, climbing to 10,000 feet. Liam closed his eyes and listened. The engine noise was loud but steady. No rattle, no irregularity, just the deep, powerful hum of thrust. Leveling off, Carmen said, initiating throttle variation test. The engine pitch changed as Carmen adjusted the power. Up, down, up again. Liam kept his eyes closed, focusing on the sound. And then, there. A faint flutter buried beneath the main roar, just for a second. There, Liam said. Did you hear that? Jessica frowned at her screen. I've got a pressure fluctuation. Engine 2, 0.3 psi drop, lasted about half a second. Run it again, Liam said. Carmen cycled the throttle. The flutter came back slightly louder this time. 0.5 psi, Jessica said. It's getting worse. It's the resonance, Liam said. The intake's hitting a harmonic at certain power settings. Can you replicate it? Jessica asked. Carmen adjusted the throttle carefully, finding the exact point where the flutter started. The engine wavered, the sound distorting just enough to notice. Confirmed, Jessica said. We've got the failure mode. Liam opened his eyes. Through the cockpit window, he could see the horizon stretching out in all directions, the city below reduced to a grid of streets and buildings. He'd never seen the world from up here before. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. That's enough, Carmen said, bringing her down. The descent was smooth. By the time they touched down, Liam's heart had stopped racing, but his hands were still shaking. Ava was waiting for them as they climbed out. Well? He was right, Jessica said. The intake resonance is real. We've got it on record. Ava looked at Liam. You heard it? Yeah, Liam said. Same sound as this morning. Just louder. Ava exhaled slowly. For the first time since he'd met her, she looked relieved. Okay, now we know what we're fixing. David walked over, tablet in hand. I've already started running simulations. If we redesign the intake baffles and adjust the airflow geometry, we can eliminate the resonance. But it's going to take time. How much time? Ava asked. A week. Maybe less if we push. We push, Ava said. We've got 2 weeks to certification. I want this fixed in one. David nodded. We'll get it done. As the team dispersed, Liam stood on the tarmac, watching the engineers head back to the hangar. His legs still felt shaky from the flight, and his mind was racing with everything that had just happened. Ava walked over and stood next to him. You did good today. I just listened, Liam said. That's more than most people do. She paused. How's your son doing? Ben, right? Liam glanced at her, surprised she'd remembered. He's fine. School's out in a couple hours. I need to pick him up. Go, Ava said. We'll start fresh tomorrow. Liam hesitated. You're really going to pay me for this? I said I would, didn't I? Yeah, but... No buts, Ava said. You earned it. Go get your kid. Liam nodded. He started toward his truck, then stopped and looked back. Thank you. Ava smiled. Don't thank me yet. We've still got a lot of work to do. Sure. That night, after Ben was asleep, Liam sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. The house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the old pipes in the walls. He kept thinking about the flight, the sound of the engines, the view from 10,000 feet, the look on Ava's face when Jessica confirmed he was right. For the first time in years, Liam felt like he'd done something that mattered. His phone buzzed. A text from Ava. Team meeting at 8 a.m. Don't be late. Liam smiled and set the phone down. He looked around the kitchen, at the cracked linoleum, the stove with the broken burner, the stack of unpaid bills on the counter. Maybe things were about to change, or maybe he was just setting himself up for another failure. Either way, he was going to find out, because tomorrow, the real work began. The meeting room was already full when Liam arrived at 7:55 the next morning. He'd stopped for coffee on the way, partly because he needed it and partly because he didn't know if Aeropulse had a break room. Turned out they did, but the coffee looked like it had been sitting there since yesterday. David was at the whiteboard, drawing diagrams. Jessica sat at the table with her laptop open, and Marcus stood near the window with his arms crossed. Ava wasn't there yet. Morning, Liam said. Jessica looked up and smiled. You made it. Barely. Liam took a seat. Ben had a meltdown about his science project. Apparently it's due Friday and he hasn't started. How old is he? Jessica asked. 8? They start them young now, she said. My nephew's in 4th grade and they've got him doing presentations with PowerPoint. Marcus turned from the window. Are we here to talk about elementary school or fix engines? Jessica's smile faded. Just making conversation, Marcus. Save it for lunch. Liam sipped his coffee and kept his mouth shut. He'd worked enough jobs to recognize the guy who thought everyone else was wasting his time. Marcus was that guy. Ava walked in carrying a stack of folders and a tablet. She looked like she hadn't slept much. All right, let's get started. David, walk us through the redesign. David tapped the whiteboard. The resonance issue stems from the intake geometry. The current design has a straight-through flow path, which works fine under steady conditions. But when you vary the throttle, you create pressure waves that bounce back and forth in the intake plenum. At certain frequencies, those waves reinforce each other, and you get the resonance spike. Liam leaned forward. Like feedback in a speaker. David paused. Yeah, actually. That's a decent analogy. Marcus looked irritated. So what's the fix? We add baffles to the intake, David said. They'll disrupt the wave propagation and prevent the resonance from building. We'll also adjust the plenum volume to shift the natural frequency outside the operating range. How much does that change the airflow? Ava asked. Negligible. Maybe a 2% reduction in peak efficiency, but well within acceptable margins. And the timeline? David glanced at Jessica. If we start fabrication today, we can have the first prototype ready in 4 days. Testing and validation will take another 3. Ava did the math in her head. That's 7 days. Certification review is in 12. We've got 5 days of buffer. Assuming everything goes perfectly, Marcus said. It won't, Ava said. It never does. But we'll deal with problems as they come up. She looked around the table. Jessica, you're on fabrication oversight. I want hourly updates. Marcus, you're running the test matrix. Make sure we cover every possible failure mode. David, you coordinate with the FAA inspector. I want them in the loop every step of the way. What about me? Liam asked. Ava met his eyes. You're with me. We're going to figure out why this happened in the first place. Marcus frowned. We already know why. The intake design was flawed. No, Ava said. We know what the flaw is. I want to know how it got past 3 rounds of engineering review and 2 certification tests without anyone catching it. The room went quiet. You think someone missed it deliberately? Jessica asked. I think we got sloppy, Ava said, and I want to make sure it doesn't happen again. David set down his marker. Ava, if you're suggesting... I'm not suggesting anything, Ava said. I'm stating a fact. We had a design flaw that should have been caught months ago, and it wasn't. Either our process is broken or our people aren't following it. Either way, we need to know which. Marcus shook his head. This is a waste of time. We should be focused on the fix, not pointing fingers. I'm not pointing fingers, Ava said. I'm doing root cause analysis. If you've got a problem with that, you can leave. Marcus stared at her for a long moment. Then he turned and walked out. The door slammed behind him. Jessica winced. That went well. He'll get over it, Ava said. Or he won't. Either way, we've got work to do. She looked at David. Get the team started on fabrication. I'll check in this afternoon. David nodded and left, taking Jessica with him. When they were gone, Liam said, You pissed him off pretty good. Marcus is always pissed off about something, Ava said. He's brilliant, but he takes everything personally. She picked up her tablet. Come on, I want to show you something. She led him down a hallway to a small office at the back of the building. Inside, filing cabinets lined the walls, and a desk was buried under stacks of binders and printouts. This is the documentation archive, Ava said. Every design review, every test report, every approval memo we've ever generated, it's all here. Liam looked around. You keep paper copies of everything? FAA requires it. Digital backups too, but the originals have to be on file. She pulled a binder from one of the stacks and flipped it open. This is the intake design review from 18 months ago. 3 senior engineers signed off on it. No red flags, no concerns. Liam scanned the pages. Most of it was technical jargon he didn't understand, but he recognized the signatures at the bottom. One of them was David's. You think he missed something? Liam asked. I think we all missed something, Ava said. The question is why? She handed him the binder and pulled out another one, this one thicker, with a red cover. This is the failure report from the first engine incident. Happened 6 weeks ago. The plane was on approach when the engine lost power for about 10 seconds, then recovered. Pilot declared an emergency and landed safely. No injuries. Liam read through the report. The language was dry and technical, but the fear came through anyway. 10 seconds of power loss at low altitude was enough to kill everyone on board. What did the investigation find? He asked. Nothing, Ava said. They tore the engine apart and couldn't find a mechanical defect, chalked it up to a sensor glitch. But it wasn't. No, it was the resonance. We just didn't know it yet. Liam set the binder down. How many incidents have there been? Ava pulled out a folder and opened it. Inside were incident reports, each one clipped to a summary sheet. 7. The first one 6 weeks ago, the last one 3 days ago. All of them the same pattern, power loss during throttle transition, recovery within seconds, no crashes, but 2 near misses. And the FAA didn't ground you after the second one. They wanted to, but we convinced them we were actively investigating and that the failure mode was non-catastrophic. They gave us 60 days to find the cause and implement a fix. That deadline's in 12 days. Liam did the math. So if the certification review doesn't go well, we're done, Ava said. The FAA will revoke our operating certificate and every plane we've sold will be grounded. The company folds, and I spend the next 10 years paying off debts. What about the investors? Ava laughed, but there was no humor in it. Most of them are already looking for the exits. I've got a board meeting on Friday where I'm pretty sure they're going to vote to shut us down and liquidate assets. Can they do that? They own 40% of the company. If they get one more board member to flip, they've got a majority. She closed the folder. So yeah, they can do that. Liam leaned against the desk. Why are you telling me all this? Ava looked at him. Because you're the only person here who doesn't have a stake in the outcome. David, Jessica, Marcus, they're all invested, financially and emotionally. If this company goes under, they lose their jobs, their reputations, everything. They want to fix the problem, but they also want to believe it's not their fault. And you? I want the truth, Ava said, even if it means admitting I screwed up. Liam picked up the design review binder again and flipped through it more slowly this time. The technical language was dense, but the structure was clear. Each section had a checklist of items that needed to be verified, and each one was marked as complete. Did anyone actually test the intake under variable load, he asked. Ava frowned. What do you mean? The checklist says airflow validation complete, but it doesn't say what conditions were tested. If they only ran steady-state tests, they would have missed the resonance entirely. Ava took the binder and read the section he was pointing to. Her expression darkened. Son of a bitch. What? The test protocol. It's a standard template we use for all engine components. Steady-state operation only. She flipped to the next page. David signed off on it without modifying the test conditions. So it's his fault? No, Ava said. It's my fault. I approved the protocol. I should have caught this. She set the binder down and pressed her palms against the desk, staring at the stacks of paper like they were evidence of some crime she'd committed. We cut corners, she said quietly. Not because we wanted to, but because we were running out of money and time. I told the team to use standard protocols wherever possible to save on testing costs. I thought we were being efficient. Turns out we were just being reckless. Liam didn't say anything. He'd seen this before. People trying to do the right thing and making mistakes because they were stretched too thin. It happened in every industry, every job. The only difference was that most mistakes didn't involve engines falling out of the sky. So what do we do now? He asked. Ava straightened up. We fix the engine. We pass the certification review, and then we rebuild the entire testing process from the ground up so this never happens again. In 12 days. In 12 days, Ava agreed. Liam shook his head. You know that's insane, right? Yeah, Ava said. But it's the only option we've got. She picked up her tablet and headed for the door. Liam followed her back down the hallway toward the hangar. Halfway there, his phone buzzed. A text from Ben's school. Ben left his lunch at home. Can you bring it? Liam stopped. I need to run an errand. My kid forgot his lunch. Ava turned. How long will it take? 40 minutes, maybe. School's on the other side of town. Go, she said. Family comes first. Liam hesitated. You sure? I've got 3 engineers and a machine shop. I think we'll survive without you for an hour. She paused. But Liam, when you come back, I need you focused. We don't have time for distractions. I know. Good. Liam headed for his truck. On the way, he called Ben's school and told them he'd be there in 20 minutes. The woman on the other end sounded annoyed, like he'd personally inconvenienced her by having a kid who forgot things. He made it to the school in 15 minutes and dropped the lunch off at the front desk. Ben was in class, so Liam didn't see him. He thought about waiting, but Ava's words echoed in his head. We don't have time for distractions. On the drive back, he thought about the binders in that office, all those signatures and checklists and reports. Ava had called it a process failure, but Liam knew it was more than that. It was what happened when people were pushed too hard for too long. They started cutting corners, trusting assumptions, skipping steps because there wasn't time to do it right. He'd done it himself, back when he was still working at the auto shop. A customer would come in with a problem, and the boss would say, fix it quick, we've got 5 more cars waiting. So Liam would fix it quick, and most of the time it was fine. But every once in a while, something would come back a week later, worse than before, because he'd missed something in the rush. That was small time, though. Brake pads and oil changes. Nobody died if he got it wrong. This was different. When he got back to the hangar, the fabrication team was already at work. The sound of cutting tools and welding torches filled the space, and the smell of hot metal hung in the air. Jessica stood near one of the workbenches, watching as a technician shaped a piece of aluminum into a baffle. How's it going? Liam asked. Jessica looked up. Slower than I'd like. The tolerances are tight, and we can't afford any mistakes. How many baffles do you need? 8 per engine, 16 total for the prototype. She glanced at her watch. At this rate, we'll have them done by tomorrow night. That's ahead of schedule. For now, Jessica said, but we haven't started testing yet. That's where things usually fall apart. Liam watched the technician work, his hands steady as he measured and cut and shaped the metal. There was something calming about it, the precision, the focus. It reminded him of his own work, back when he had work. "Can I ask you something?" Jessica said. "Sure." "Why'd you take this job?" Liam thought about it. "I needed the money." "That's it?" "That's most of it," he admitted. "But also, I don't know, it felt like something worth doing." Jessica smiled. "Yeah, I get that." She went back to her work, and Liam wandered over to where Ava was standing near the test rig, talking to David. They were arguing about something. Liam could tell by the way David kept shaking his head. "It's not about blame," Ava was saying. "It's about accountability." "You want me to admit I screwed up," David said. "I want you to acknowledge that we all screwed up, me included." David rubbed his face. "Fine. I should have modified the test protocol. I didn't. Happy?" "No," Ava said, "but it's a start." She walked away before David could respond. Liam caught up with her near the office. "That looked fun," he said. "David thinks I'm blaming him for the design flaw," Ava said. "He's not entirely wrong. But you're blaming yourself too." "Yeah." She stopped and turned to face him. "Here's the thing, Liam. I built this company because I wanted to do something that mattered. I wanted to prove that we could build better aircraft, safer aircraft, without cutting corners or compromising on quality. And the first time we hit a rough patch, what did I do? I cut corners. I compromised." "You were trying to keep the company alive." "Doesn't matter. I made a choice, and people could have died because of it." Liam didn't have an answer for that. She was right, and they both knew it. "So what now?" he asked. "Now we make sure it doesn't happen again," Ava said. "We fix the engine, we pass the review, and then we rebuild this company the right way. No shortcuts, no excuses." "You really think you can do that?" Ava looked at him. "I have to." The rest of the day was a blur of measurements and calculations and endless technical discussions that Liam only half understood. By the time 6 o'clock rolled around, his head was pounding and his eyes hurt from staring at blueprints. Ava found him in the break room, nursing a cup of the terrible coffee. "You look like hell," she said. "Thanks. Go home, get some sleep. We start early again tomorrow." Liam stood and tossed the cup in the trash. "What about you?" "I'll be here a while longer. I want to review the test matrix before Marcus finalizes it." "You ever go home?" Ava smiled faintly. "Not if I can help it." Liam left and drove back to his house. Ben was already home, sitting at the kitchen table with his science project spread out in front of him. He'd built a volcano out of paper mache, and it looked like it was about to collapse. "How was school?" Liam asked. "Fine. Thanks for bringing my lunch." "No problem." Ben looked up. "You look tired. Long day. Is the new job hard?" Liam thought about that. "Yeah, but it's interesting." Ben went back to his volcano. Liam made dinner, spaghetti because it was cheap and Ben would actually eat it, and they sat together at the table in silence. After dinner, Liam helped Ben finish the volcano, reinforcing the structure with tape and glue. It still looked like it might fall apart, but at least now it had a fighting chance. Later, after Ben was in bed, Liam sat on the couch and stared at the ceiling. His phone buzzed. Another text from Ava. "Fabrication's running behind. Might need an extra day." Liam typed back. "We've got time." Ava, "Barely." He didn't respond to that. What was there to say? The next 3 days passed in a haze of work. The baffles were fabricated, installed, tested, and retested. The first prototype showed a 20% reduction in resonance amplitude, which was good, but not good enough. David tweaked the design, adding a secondary baffle array that brought the resonance down to negligible levels. The second prototype was perfect. On the fourth day, they installed the redesigned intake on one of the grounded aircraft and ran a full ground test. The engine performed flawlessly, smooth, consistent, no pressure fluctuations. "We're ready for flight testing," David said. Ava nodded. "Schedule it for tomorrow morning. I want Carmen on the stick, and I want full telemetry." "You want Liam on board again?" Jessica asked. Ava looked at Liam. "You up for another flight?" Liam thought about the last one, the way his stomach had dropped during takeoff, the sound of the engines rattling through the fuselage. "Yeah," he said. "I'm up for it." The next morning dawned cold and clear. Liam arrived at the airfield just after sunrise and found the team already running pre-flight checks. Carmen was in the cockpit, going through her checklist. Jessica was at the monitoring station, setting up the data feeds. Ava stood near the wing, arms crossed, watching everything with the intensity of someone who knew this was the moment that mattered. Nervous? Liam asked. Terrified, she said. Good. That means you're paying attention. Ava smiled. Where'd you hear that? Someone smart told me once. They boarded the plane. Liam strapped into the same seat as before, next to Jessica. The engines started, and the familiar roar filled the cabin. Here we go, Carmen said. The plane rolled forward, picking up speed. The ground blurred beneath them, and then they were airborne, climbing into the pale morning sky. Engine 1, normal, Jessica said. Engine 2, normal, climbing to 10,000. Liam closed his eyes and listened. The sound was different this time, cleaner, steadier, no flutter, no irregularity. Leveling off, Carmen said. Running throttle variation test. The engine pitch changed, up, down, up again. Liam held his breath, waiting for the rattle. It didn't come. Pressure holding steady, Jessica said. No fluctuations, no resonance. Carmen cycled the throttle again, pushing the engines through the full range of power settings. The sound remained constant, smooth, perfect. It's working, Jessica said quietly. Liam opened his eyes. Through the window, the world stretched out below them. Fields and roads and the city in the distance, all of it painted in the golden light of early morning. Yeah, he said, it's working. Carmen brought the plane down in a smooth landing, and when they rolled to a stop, the entire team was waiting on the tarmac. David was grinning. Marcus looked grudgingly impressed. Ava just looked relieved. How'd it go? David asked. Perfect, Jessica said. 0 resonance across the entire power range. David let out a breath he'd been holding for days. We did it. Not yet, Ava said. We still need FAA approval. But for the first time in weeks, she looked like she believed they might actually get it. The FAA inspector arrived 2 days later in a gray sedan that looked like it had seen better decades. His name was Raymond Kowalski, and he had the kind of face that suggested he'd spent his entire career watching people lie to him. He was somewhere in his 60s, with white hair cropped close to his skull and reading glasses that hung from a chain around his neck. Ava met him at the gate. Mr. Kowalski, thanks for coming on short notice. Ms. Bennett. He shook her hand without smiling. Let's be clear about something. I'm not here to help you pass your certification review. I'm here to determine whether your aircraft are safe to operate. If they're not, I'm grounding your entire fleet today. Understood, Ava said. Kowalski looked past her at the hangar where the modified aircraft sat waiting. Show me what you've got. Ava led him inside where David and Jessica had set up a presentation area with laptops, test data, and the redesigned intake components laid out on a table. Liam stood off to the side, trying to stay out of the way. Kowalski walked slowly around the table, examining each component without touching anything. Walk me through the failure mode. David stepped forward. The original intake design created a resonance condition under variable throttle settings. Pressure waves would build up in the plenum, causing intermittent power loss. We identified the root cause as inadequate flow disruption in the intake geometry. And the fix? We added a series of baffles to disrupt wave propagation and modified the plenum volume to shift the resonance frequency outside the operating range. David pulled up a graph on his laptop. Here's the test data. 0 resonance across the full power spectrum. Kowalski studied the graph for a long moment. How many test flights? 3, Jessica said. All successful. Full telemetry available for review. I want to see the raw data, not the summary. Jessica handed him a tablet loaded with the complete test records. Kowalski scrolled through page after page of numbers, his expression unreadable. Who identified the original failure mode? He asked without looking up. Ava glanced at Liam. That would be Mr. Carter. Kowalski looked up. Carter, you're the consultant? Something like that, Liam said. What's your background? Automotive repair. Kowalski's eyebrows went up. You're telling me a car mechanic diagnosed a jet engine defect that your entire engineering team missed? He has very good ears, Ava said. Kowalski looked at Liam for a long moment, then turned back to David. I want to inspect the installation. Then I want to observe a test flight. Then I want detailed documentation on every modification you made, including material certifications and manufacturing tolerances. We can have all of that ready in an hour, David said. Good, because I'm not signing off on anything until I'm satisfied this fix is permanent. Kowalski set the tablet down. And Ms. Bennett, if I find out you've been hiding problems or cutting corners to rush this through, I will shut you down so fast your head will spin. Are we clear? Crystal clear, Ava said. Kowalski spent the next 4 hours going through every detail of the modification. He crawled inside the engine cowling with a flashlight, checking welds and fittings. He reviewed material certifications and compared them against the original specs. He questioned every engineering decision, every test parameter, every assumption. David handled most of the technical questions, but Kowalski kept circling back to Liam. You heard the resonance from outside the aircraft? Yes, sir. At what distance? Maybe 100 yards? Through a fence? And no one else noticed it? Liam shrugged. I guess they weren't listening. Kowalski grunted. You ever work on aircraft before this? No, sir. Why'd you get involved? Because something sounded wrong, and I couldn't ignore it. Kowalski studied him. You know what most people do when they hear something wrong? They assume someone else will deal with it. They don't stick their neck out. Yeah, well, Liam said, I'm not most people. For the first time, something that might have been a smile crossed Kowalski's face. No, I don't suppose you are. By early afternoon, Kowalski had finished his ground inspection. All right, he said, let's see it fly. Carmen was already in the cockpit running her pre-flight checks. Kowalski climbed into the monitoring seat and Liam found himself relegated to the back of the cabin, strapped into a jump seat with a view of nothing but bulkhead. The takeoff was smooth. Liam listened to the engines, waiting for any hint of the old problem, but the sound was clean, steady, perfect. Through the open cockpit door, he could hear Carmen and Kowalski talking. Climbing to 12,000, Carmen said. Running full power check. The engines roared, pushing the aircraft higher. Liam's stomach lurched, but the sound stayed consistent. Throttle to idle, Kowalski said. The engine noise dropped to a whisper. The aircraft seemed to float for a moment before Carmen brought the power back up. Cycle it again, Kowalski said. Carmen repeated the test. Up, down, up again. The engines responded instantly, without hesitation. Satisfied? Carmen asked. Getting there, Kowalski said. They ran tests for another 40 minutes, pushing the aircraft through every conceivable flight condition. High altitude, low altitude, rapid throttle changes, sustained climb, sustained descent. The engines never faltered. When they finally landed, Kowalski climbed out of the aircraft and stood on the tarmac for a moment, looking up at the plane. Well? Ava asked. Kowalski turned to her. The fix works. I'll recommend approval for the certification review. Ava's shoulders sagged with relief. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Kowalski said. The review board still has to sign off, and they're going to ask questions, hard questions, about how this problem got past your original certification, about your quality control processes, about whether you can be trusted to maintain safety standards going forward. I understand. Do you? Kowalski stepped closer. Because from where I'm standing, you got lucky. You had a design flaw that should have killed people, and the only reason it didn't is because your engines were overbuilt enough to compensate. That's not good engineering. That's dumb luck. Ava's face hardened. With respect, Mr. Kowalski, luck had nothing to do with it. We identified the problem, we fixed it, and we tested it thoroughly. That's what good engineering looks like. No, Kowalski said. Good engineering is not having the problem in the first place. He walked back to his car and drove away without another word. David came over to where Ava was standing. Well, that was encouraging. He's right, though, Ava said quietly. About what? All of it. She turned and walked back toward the office. Liam caught up with her halfway across the tarmac. You okay? Fine. You don't sound fine. Ava stopped. I just had a federal inspector tell me my company's success is based on dumb luck. How do you think I should sound? Maybe grateful that he's recommending approval anyway? I am grateful, Ava said. I'm also aware that he's right. We screwed up. We got away with it this time, but we might not be so lucky next time. So make sure there isn't a next time. That's easier said than done. Most things are, Liam said. Ava looked at him. You always this optimistic? Not usually, no. But right now, I'm standing on an airfield where I just watched an engine I helped fix perform perfectly. So yeah, today I'm optimistic. Ava laughed despite herself. You're a strange guy, Liam Carter. I've been told. They walked back to the office together. Inside, Ava pulled up her calendar and winced. The board meeting's tomorrow at 10. I need to prepare a presentation. What are you going to tell them? The truth, Ava said. That we identified a critical flaw, fixed it, and passed FAA inspection. That we're on track for certification review. That the company's going to survive. You think they'll buy it? I think some of them want to believe it, Ava said. The rest just want their money back. Liam leaned against the desk. Can I ask you something? Sure. Why does this matter so much to you? Ava was quiet for a moment. You ever want something so badly that you're willing to risk everything for it? Not really. Well, I have. This company is everything I've worked for since I graduated college. Every dollar I've saved, every relationship I've sacrificed, every night I didn't sleep, it all went into building Aeropulse. And the idea that it might all disappear because I made one stupid decision? She shook her head. I can't let that happen. Even if it means fighting people who don't want you to succeed? Especially then. Liam understood that. He'd spent most of his adult life fighting against the current, trying to keep his head above water while the world did its best to drag him under. The difference was that Ava had chosen her fight. Liam had just been trying to survive. He left the office and headed home. Ben was at a friend's house, which meant Liam had the place to himself for a few hours. He sat on the couch with a beer he'd been saving and stared at the wall. His phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Mr. Carter? A woman's voice, professional and clipped. This is Rachel Mendez from the Department of Child Services. Liam's stomach dropped. What's this about? We received a report that your son has been left unsupervised on multiple occasions. I need to schedule a home visit to assess the situation. Who reported that? I'm not at liberty to say, but the report was specific enough that we're required to investigate. Liam closed his eyes. When do you want to come? Tomorrow afternoon, 2 o'clock. Fine, I'll be here. Thank you, Mr. Carter. I'll see you tomorrow. The line went dead. Liam sat there for a long time, the phone still pressed to his ear. He knew exactly who'd made that report, Ben's teacher, the one who'd given him grief about the forgotten lunch. She'd been looking for an excuse to cause trouble ever since Liam had missed a parent-teacher conference last month. He called Ben's friend's mom and asked her to keep him for another hour. Then he started cleaning the house. It wasn't dirty, exactly, but it wasn't clean either. Dishes in the sink, laundry piled on the couch, clutter on every surface. The kind of mess that accumulated when you were too tired to care. By the time Ben came home, the place looked halfway decent. Why'd you clean? Ben asked. Just felt like it. Ben looked suspicious but didn't push. They had dinner, leftovers from the night before, and Ben went to bed early. Liam stayed up, pacing the small living room, trying to figure out what he was going to say to the social worker tomorrow. The truth was, he had left Ben alone a few times. Not often, and never for long. Just quick trips to the store or to drop something off at work. Ben was 8, old enough to stay by himself for an hour. But Liam knew how it would look to someone like Rachel Mendez. Neglect, irresponsibility, evidence that he wasn't fit to be a parent. He didn't sleep that night. The next morning, he called Ava and told her he couldn't make it to the board meeting. Is everything okay? She asked. Family stuff. I'll be back tomorrow. Liam, if you need help... I don't, he said. I just need a day. There was a pause. Okay. Take the time you need. He spent the morning cleaning more, making sure the house looked lived in but not chaotic. At 1:30, he picked Ben up from school and brought him home. Why aren't you at work? Ben asked. Someone's coming to visit, a lady from the county. Ben's face went pale. Did I do something wrong? No, buddy, you didn't do anything. This is just something I have to deal with. Rachel Mendez arrived exactly at 2. She was younger than Liam expected, maybe 30, with dark hair pulled back in a bun and a briefcase that looked like it weighed more than she did. Mr. Carter, she said, shaking his hand. Thank you for meeting with me. Not like I had a choice. She smiled thinly. May I come in? Liam led her inside. Ben was sitting on the couch, trying to look invisible. And you must be Ben, Rachel said. Ben nodded. Do you mind if I ask you a few questions? Ben looked at Liam, who nodded. It's okay. Rachel sat down in the armchair and pulled out a notebook. Ben, do you ever stay home by yourself? Sometimes. How often? Ben shrugged. I don't know, not a lot. When your dad leaves, does he tell you where he's going? Yeah, usually the store or work. And how long is he usually gone? Like an hour? Maybe. Rachel wrote something down. Do you feel safe when you're home alone? Yeah, I just watch TV or do homework. Has your dad ever left you alone at night? No. Rachel looked at Liam. Is that accurate? Yes, Liam said. I've never left him alone at night. She made another note. Mr. Carter, can you tell me about your current employment situation? I'm working for an aviation company, Aeropulse. It's full-time. And what about before that? I worked at a diner. Before that, an auto shop that closed down. So your employment has been inconsistent. I've always had a job, Liam said. It just hasn't always been the same job. Rachel looked around the house, taking in the cramped kitchen, the worn furniture, the general air of things held together by determination and duct tape. Mr. Carter, I'm going to be frank with you. The report we received suggests that Ben is being neglected due to your work schedule and financial situation. I need to determine whether that's true. It's not, Liam said. Ben's fed, he's clothed, he goes to school every day. I'm doing the best I can. I'm sure you are, but the best you can might not be enough. Liam felt his temper flare. What's that supposed to mean? It means that single parenthood is difficult, especially under financial strain. And sometimes, despite our best intentions, we're not able to provide the level of care our children need. I take care of my son. I believe you, but I also need to make sure Ben's needs are being met. She closed her notebook. I'm going to recommend a follow-up visit in 30 days. In the meantime, I'd like you to consider enrolling Ben in an after-school program. It would provide supervision during the hours you're at work. Those programs cost money. There are subsidized options available. I can provide you with a list. Liam bit back the response he wanted to give and just nodded. Fine. Rachel stood. Thank you for your cooperation, Mr. Carter. I'll be in touch. After she left, Ben came over and sat next to Liam on the couch. Are they going to take me away? No, Liam said. Nobody's taking you anywhere. Promise? Liam pulled him close. I promise. But the truth was, he didn't know if he could keep that promise. He didn't know what the follow-up visit would bring or what Rachel Mendez would decide after 30 days of watching him try to hold everything together. That night, after Ben was asleep, Liam sat at the kitchen table and looked at his bank account. The paycheck from Aeropulse had helped, but it wasn't enough to cover rent, food, utilities, and an after-school program. Something had to give. His phone buzzed, a text from Ava. Board meeting went well. They're giving us 6 more months. How's everything on your end? Liam stared at the message for a long time. Then he typed, complicated. But I'll figure it out. Ava. If you need anything, let me know. Liam didn't respond. What was he supposed to say? That he was one bad week away from losing his kid? That the life he'd built was held together with hope and stubbornness and not much else? He set the phone down and went to bed, but sleep didn't come easy. The next morning, he dropped Ben off at school and headed to the airfield. The certification review was in 4 days and there was still work to do. David had the team running final checks on all the aircraft, making sure every modification was perfect. Ava found Liam in the hangar. You okay? You look like you didn't sleep. I'm fine. Liam. He turned to face her. I said I'm fine. Ava studied him for a moment, then nodded. Okay, but if you need to talk, I don't. She left him alone after that. The next 3 days were a blur. Inspections, tests, paperwork, more inspections. By the time the certification review rolled around, Liam felt like he'd aged 10 years. The review board consisted of 3 FAA officials, including Kowalski. They spent 6 hours going through every detail of the modification, asking questions, demanding evidence, challenging every assumption. Ava presented the data with the kind of confidence that came from knowing she was right. David handled the technical questions. Jessica provided supporting documentation. Liam sat in the back and watched. At the end of the day, the board went into deliberation. Ava, David, Jessica, and Liam waited in the conference room, not speaking, just sitting with the weight of everything they'd done to get to this moment. After an hour, Kowalski came back. His face was unreadable. "Ms. Bennett," he said, "the board has reviewed your submission." Ava stood. "And?" "You're approved. Certification reinstated, effective immediately." The room erupted. David let out a whoop. Jessica hugged Ava. Even Marcus, who'd been standing in the corner looking skeptical the entire time, allowed himself a small smile. Ava shook Kowalski's hand. "Thank you." "Don't thank me," Kowalski said. "Thank your team. They did the work." He left, and the celebration continued. Someone broke out a bottle of champagne that had been hidden in the office for exactly this moment. Glasses were poured, toasts were made. Ava found Liam standing by the window, looking out at the airfield. "You're not celebrating." "I don't drink," Liam said. "That's not what I meant." Liam turned to face her. "This is your win, Ava. You and your team. I just helped a little." "You did more than help," Ava said. "You saved this company." "No. You saved it. I just pointed out what was wrong." Ava set her glass down. "Liam, what's going on? And don't tell me it's nothing." Liam hesitated. Then, for reasons he couldn't quite explain, he told her. About Rachel Mendez, about the report, about the follow-up visit in 3 weeks. Ava listened without interrupting. When he finished, she said, "What do you need?" "I need to prove I can take care of my kid." "Then let me help." "How?" "The after-school program. I'll cover it." Liam shook his head. "I can't ask you to do that." "You're not asking, I'm offering." She picked up her glass again. "You helped me when I needed it. Let me return the favor." Liam wanted to argue, but the truth was, he didn't have the energy. "Okay, thank you." "Don't mention it." Ava clinked her glass against the window. "Here's to fixing things." Liam managed a smile. "Yeah, here's to that." The after-school program started the following Monday. Ben hadn't been thrilled about it. He'd complained that he was old enough to stay home by himself, that the other kids would think he was a baby, but Liam had shut that down fast. This wasn't negotiable. This was survival. Ava had handled the enrollment herself, making a few calls and cutting through the red tape that would have taken Liam weeks to navigate. When he tried to thank her again, she'd waved him off like it was nothing. But it wasn't nothing. It was the difference between keeping his son and losing everything. The first week after certification felt strange. The crisis was over, the planes were flying again, and Aeropulse had started taking new orders. Ava had hired 2 more engineers and was talking about expanding the fleet. The company was stabilizing, finding its rhythm. But Liam couldn't shake the feeling that he was waiting for the other shoe to drop. He was at his desk, a small workspace Ava had set up for him in the corner of the hangar, when Marcus appeared, holding a folder. "Got a minute?" Marcus asked. "Sure." Marcus set the folder down. Inside were technical drawings, pages of calculations, and a proposal written in dense engineering language that Liam only half understood. "What's this?" Liam asked. "A new project. Ava wants to redesign the fuel system for better efficiency. She asked me to put together a team." "Okay. What's that got to do with me?" Marcus crossed his arms. "She wants you on it." Liam looked up. "Why?" "Because apparently you've got a gift for finding problems nobody else sees." Marcus didn't sound happy about it. "You don't want me on the team." "I don't know you well enough to want or not want you," Marcus said. "But I know you're not an engineer, and I don't like the idea of bringing someone onto a technical project just because the boss has a soft spot for them." Liam closed the folder. "Then tell Ava you don't want me." "I did. She said you're on the team anyway." "Sounds like you've got your answer then." Marcus leaned against the desk. "Look, I'm not trying to be a dick here, but this company almost went under because we cut corners and trusted assumptions instead of data. If we're going to rebuild, we need to do it right. That means qualified people making qualified decisions." "You think I'm not qualified?" "I think you got lucky once. I think Ava's grateful, and she's letting that cloud her judgment." Liam met his eyes. "You might be right, but I'm still on the team, so either we figure out how to work together, or you spend the next few months resenting me." "Your choice." Marcus stared at him for a long moment. Then he picked up the folder. First meeting's tomorrow at 9. Don't be late. He walked away without another word. Liam sat there staring at the space where Marcus had been standing. He wasn't wrong. Liam didn't have the credentials, didn't have the training. He'd stumbled into this job because he'd heard something nobody else did. That didn't make him an engineer, but it didn't make him useless either. That night, he tried to read through the proposal Marcus had left. Most of it was gibberish, equations and specifications that assumed a level of technical knowledge Liam didn't have. But buried in the jargon, he found something he recognized, a section on fuel flow dynamics and pressure regulation. It wasn't that different from the carburetor systems he'd worked on in cars. Different scale, different materials, but the same basic principles. Fuel had to flow at the right pressure, at the right time, in the right amounts. Too much and you flooded the system. Too little and you starved the engine. He made notes in the margins, sketching out ideas that probably didn't make sense but felt right anyway. By the time he went to bed, his head was buzzing with half-formed thoughts. The meeting the next morning was held in the conference room. Marcus was there, along with Jessica and 2 engineers Liam hadn't met before, a man named Raj and a woman named Claire. Ava sat at the head of the table, tablet in hand. "All right," Ava said. Let's get started. Marcus, walk us through the proposal." Marcus stood and pulled up a presentation on the screen. Current fuel system is reliable but inefficient. We're losing about 8% of potential energy to heat dissipation and incomplete combustion. The goal is to redesign the system to recover at least half of that loss. "How?" Claire asked. "Better atomization, optimized injection timing, and improved thermal management." Marcus clicked to the next slide, which showed a detailed schematic of the fuel injector assembly. "We're proposing a variable geometry injector that adjusts spray pattern based on engine load." Raj leaned forward. "That's going to be expensive to manufacture." "Not as expensive as burning fuel we're not using," Marcus said. Ava looked at Liam. "Thoughts?" Liam hesitated. Everyone was staring at him. "I'm not sure I'm the right person to ask," he said. "Humor me." Liam looked at the schematic. "The variable geometry injector, how does it adjust the spray pattern?" Marcus pulled up another slide. "Mechanical linkage tied to a pressure sensor. As load increases, the linkage opens up the spray angle." "And if the linkage jams?" "It won't. We're using corrosion-resistant materials and redundant fail-safes." "But if it does," Liam pressed, "what happens?" Marcus frowned. "You'd get inconsistent fuel delivery. Engine performance would degrade." "And how would you know it was happening?" "The diagnostic system would flag it." "Would it, though?" Liam tapped the screen. "Because if the linkage is jamming intermittently, just sticking for a second or two before releasing, the diagnostics might not catch it. You'd just see random performance variations that don't fit a pattern." The room went quiet. Jessica pulled up the diagnostic algorithms on her laptop. "He's right. If the failure mode is intermittent and self-correcting, it'd show up as noise in the data. We'd probably dismiss it." Marcus looked irritated. "So what are you suggesting?" "I'm not suggesting anything," Liam said. "I'm just asking what happens if something goes wrong, because it always does eventually." Ava nodded slowly. "That's a valid concern. Marcus, can we add a secondary monitoring system, something independent of the main diagnostics?" "It'd add weight and complexity." "It'd also add safety," Ava said. "Make it happen." Marcus didn't look happy, but he made a note. "Fine." The meeting continued for another hour, covering manufacturing timelines, material costs, and testing protocols. Liam stayed quiet for most of it, only speaking up when something didn't make sense or when he spotted a potential problem nobody else seemed to be considering. Afterward, Jessica caught up with him in the hallway. "That was good in there." "Marcus doesn't think so." "Marcus thinks everyone who isn't Marcus is an idiot," Jessica said. "Don't take it personally." "I'm trying not to." She smiled. "For what it's worth, I'm glad you're on the team. You ask different questions than the rest of us. We need that." "Thanks." Jessica headed back to her office, and Liam went outside for some air. The airfield was quiet, just the sound of wind across the tarmac and the distant hum of machinery. He stood there for a while, hands in his pockets, trying to shake the feeling that he didn't belong. His phone buzzed, a text from Ben. "Can you pick me up early today? They're doing a field trip thing, and I don't want to go." Liam checked the time. It was barely noon. He texted back, "What kind of field trip?" Ben, "Museum. It's boring." Liam, "You don't even know what museum it is." Ben, "Doesn't matter. They're all boring." Liam smiled despite himself. "You're going. Stop complaining." Ben didn't respond. That evening, when Liam picked Ben up from the after-school program, the kid looked miserable. "How was the museum?" Liam asked. "Terrible. What'd you see?" "Dinosaurs or something? I don't know. I wasn't paying attention." Liam pulled out of the parking lot. "You know, when I was your age, I would have loved a field trip to see dinosaurs." "Yeah, well, you're weird," Liam laughed. "Fair enough." They drove in silence for a while. Then Ben said, "Dad, yeah? Is that lady from the county going to come back?" Liam's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Probably. But it's going to be fine." "How do you know?" "Because I'm doing everything she asked. You're in the after-school program. We've got food in the fridge. The house is clean. There's nothing for her to complain about." Ben didn't look convinced. "What if she takes me away anyway?" "She's not going to take you away." "But what if she does?" Liam pulled over to the side of the road and turned to face his son. "Ben, listen to me. Nobody is taking you anywhere. I don't care what that lady says or what anyone else thinks. You're my kid, and I'm not letting you go. Understand?" Ben nodded, but his eyes were still worried. Liam reached over and squeezed his shoulder. "We're going to be okay." He pulled back onto the road and drove home, trying to believe his own words. The next 2 weeks fell into a rhythm. Work during the day, pick up Ben in the evening, help with homework, make dinner, repeat. The fuel system project moved forward slowly but steadily. Marcus continued to push back on every idea Liam suggested, but at least now it felt less personal and more like standard engineering debate. Ava was busy most of the time, handling investors and clients and the 1,000 other things that came with running a company. But every few days, she'd stop by Liam's desk and ask how things were going. "Fine," he'd say. "You always say that." "Because it's always true." She'd smile and move on, and Liam would go back to whatever task he was working on. 3 days before Rachel Mendez's follow-up visit, Liam got a call from Ben's school. The principal wanted to meet with him. "What's this about?" Liam asked. "I'd rather discuss it in person," the principal said. "Can you come in tomorrow morning?" Liam's stomach sank. "Yeah, I'll be there." He told Ava he needed a few hours off, and she waved him away without asking questions. The next morning, he sat in the principal's office, trying not to look as nervous as he felt. Principal Hayes was a woman in her 50s with graying hair and the kind of tired expression that came from dealing with kids and parents all day, every day. She folded her hands on the desk and looked at Liam. "Mr. Carter, thank you for coming in." "What's this about?" "It's about Ben. His teacher has expressed some concerns." Liam's jaw tightened. "Let me guess. Mrs. Patterson." Hayes nodded. "She's noticed that Ben seems withdrawn lately. He's not participating in class. He's not turning in assignments on time. She's worried about his well-being." "He's fine." "Is he?" Liam didn't answer. Hayes leaned forward. "Mr. Carter, I know you're doing your best, but Ben's struggling and we want to help. Have you considered counseling?" "He doesn't need counseling. He just needs people to leave him alone." "I understand this is difficult." "Yeah." "No, you don't," Liam said. "You don't understand what it's like to have everyone watching you, waiting for you to screw up so they can swoop in and fix things. I'm taking care of my son. He's fed, he's clothed, he's in school. What more do you want?" Hayes was quiet for a moment. "I want Ben to be happy, and right now, he's not." Liam stood. "If that's all, I need to get back to work." "Mr. Carter." "Thanks for your concern," Liam said, and walked out. He sat in his truck in the parking lot, hands shaking. He knew Hayes was right. Ben wasn't happy. He was quiet and withdrawn and probably stressed out because his dad was stressed out, and kids picked up on that kind of thing. But what was Liam supposed to do about it? He was already working full-time, making sure Ben was taken care of, keeping the house clean, staying on top of bills. There were only so many hours in a day. His phone rang. "Ava." "Hey," he said. "Where are you?" "Still at the school. Ran a little long." "Everything okay?" "Yeah, just school stuff." There was a pause. "Liam, you'd tell me if something was wrong, right?" "There's nothing wrong." Another pause. Okay, see you when you get back. She hung up. Liam started the truck and drove back to the airfield. When he got there, Marcus was waiting for him at his desk. "We've got a problem," Marcus said. "What kind of problem?" Marcus pulled up a simulation on his laptop. "The variable geometry injector. We ran stress tests on the linkage mechanism, and it's failing after about 500 hours of operation." Define failing. "Metal fatigue. The linkage is flexing under load and the repeated stress is causing microfractures. Eventually it'll snap." Liam looked at the simulation. "How long until it snaps?" "Hard to say. Could be 1,000 hours, could be 1,500. Depends on operating conditions." "So we need a stronger linkage or a different design," Marcus said. "I'm thinking we go fully electronic. No mechanical parts to fail. Electronic systems can fail too. Not as often, and we can monitor them more easily." Liam thought about it. "What's the failure mode if the electronic system goes down?" "The injector locks at a default spray angle. Engine still runs, just not as efficiently." "And if the default angle is wrong for the current load?" Marcus hesitated. "You'd get incomplete combustion, increased emissions, reduced power. But the engine wouldn't shut down." "No." Liam nodded. "Then go with the electronic system, but add a manual override, something the pilot can engage if the electronics crap out." Marcus made a note. "That'll add complexity. It'll also add safety." Marcus looked at him. "You really don't trust anything, do you?" "Not when people's lives are on the line." Marcus closed his laptop. "Fair enough." That night, Liam sat Ben down at the kitchen table. "Your principal called me in today." Ben looked down at his hands. "I know. She says you're not doing your homework, that you're not paying attention in class." "It's stupid. It's school. It's supposed to feel stupid sometimes." Ben didn't respond. Liam sighed. "Ben, talk to me. What's going on?" "Nothing." "That's not true." Ben looked up and Liam saw something in his eyes he hadn't seen before. Anger. "You want to know what's going on?" Ben said. "Everyone at school knows about the lady from the county. They're all saying you're a bad dad and that I'm going to get taken away. And I keep telling them it's not true, but they don't believe me." Liam felt like he'd been punched in the gut. "Ben, and you're always working now. You're never home. And when you are home, you're stressed out and worried about stuff you won't talk about. So yeah, I'm not doing great." "Is that what you wanted to hear?" Liam didn't know what to say. Ben stood. "I'm going to bed." "Ben, wait." But he was already gone, the bedroom door closing behind him with a soft click. Liam sat at the table for a long time, staring at nothing. He'd been so focused on keeping everything together, the job, the house, the social worker, that he hadn't noticed his kid falling apart. He thought about going after Ben, trying to explain, but what would he say? That everything was fine when it clearly wasn't? That things would get better when he had no idea if they would? Instead, he pulled out his phone and texted Ava. "Can I ask you something?" She responded a few minutes later. "Of course." Liam typed, "How do you know when you're doing the right thing?" The response took longer this time. "You don't. You just do your best and hope it's enough." Liam stared at the message. Then he typed, "What if it's not?" Ava, "Then you figure out what went wrong and you fix it, same as anything else." Liam set the phone down and went to check on Ben. The kid was already asleep, curled up under his blanket with his back to the door. Liam stood there for a moment, watching him breathe. He thought about all the ways he'd failed, the jobs he'd lost, the bills he couldn't pay, the times he'd had to choose between being a good father and being a good employee. He thought about the look on Ben's face tonight, the anger and hurt and fear all mixed together. And he thought about Ava's words. You figure out what went wrong and you fix it. The next morning, he went into Ava's office before anyone else arrived. "I need to cut back my hours," he said. Ava looked up from her laptop. "What?" "I need to be home more. For Ben. He's struggling, and I can't keep putting work first." Ava closed the laptop. "Liam, if this is about money, it's not. It's about being a father." He sat down. "I appreciate everything you've done for me. The job, the after-school program, all of it. But it's not enough. Ben needs me, and I can't give him what he needs if I'm here 60 hours a week." Ava was quiet for a moment. "What are you proposing?" I don't know, part-time maybe, or flexible hours. Something that lets me pick him up from school, be around in the evenings. And the fuel system project? I'll finish what I started, but after that, he shrugged. I don't know. Ava leaned back in her chair. You know, most people would kill for the opportunity you have here. A stable job, good pay, a chance to work on cutting-edge technology. I know, but you're willing to walk away from it. If that's what it takes, yeah. Ava smiled. You're a better father than you give yourself credit for. I'm really not. Yeah, you are. She opened her laptop again. All right, here's what we're going to do. You work normal hours, 8 to 4, no weekends. You finish the fuel system project because we need you on it. After that, we reassess. If you want to stay part-time, we'll figure it out. If you want to leave, I'll write you a recommendation that'll get you hired anywhere. Liam blinked. Just like that? Just like that. You saved my company, Liam. The least I can do is help you save your family. Liam didn't trust himself to speak. He just nodded. Now get out of here, Ava said. You've got work to do. Liam stood and headed for the door. As he reached it, Ava called after him. Liam? He turned. Thank you, she said, for reminding me what actually matters. Liam managed a smile. Anytime. He left the office and went back to his desk, feeling lighter than he had in weeks. The problems weren't solved. Rachel Mendez was still coming in 2 days, and Ben was still struggling, but at least now he had a plan. And sometimes that was enough. Rachel Mendez arrived exactly on time, just like before. Liam had spent the morning making sure everything was perfect. Dishes washed, floors swept, Ben's homework organized on the kitchen table like evidence of responsible parenting. Ben sat on the couch, fidgeting with his hands, trying not to look as nervous as he felt. Mr. Carter, Rachel said as Liam opened the door. She didn't smile, but her expression seemed less severe than last time. Thank you for having me. Not like I had a choice, Liam said, then immediately regretted it. Sorry, come in. Rachel stepped inside and set her briefcase on the table. She looked around, taking in the changes since her last visit. The place was cleaner, more organized. There were groceries visible through the open pantry door. A calendar on the wall showed Ben's after-school schedule written in careful handwriting. Ben, Rachel said, how have you been? Fine, Ben said quietly. How's the after-school program working out? Ben shrugged. It's okay. Better than being home alone, I guess. Rachel made a note. And your dad's been able to pick you up on time? Yeah, every day. She turned to Liam. Mr. Carter, I understand you've made some adjustments to your work schedule. Yeah, I talked to my boss. I'm working normal hours now, 8 to 4. Gives me time to be home with Ben. And your employer was accommodating? More than accommodating, Liam said. She understood. Rachel made another note, then sat down in the armchair. Ben, would you mind giving us a few minutes? I'd like to speak with your father privately. Ben looked at Liam, who nodded. It's okay, buddy. Go to your room. Ben left, closing the door behind him. Rachel folded her hands in her lap. Mr. Carter, I'm going to be honest with you. When I first visited, I had serious concerns about your ability to provide adequate care for Ben. The inconsistent work history, the financial instability, the periods of unsupervised time, all of that suggested a pattern of neglect. Liam's stomach tightened. But over the past month, I've seen significant changes. Ben's enrolled in a quality after-school program. You've stabilized your employment, the home environment has improved, and most importantly, Ben seems happier. Liam let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. So what does that mean? It means I'm closing the case, Rachel said. I don't see any evidence of ongoing neglect. You've addressed the concerns that were raised, and you've done it quickly and thoroughly. Liam felt something loosen in his chest. Really? Really. Rachel stood and picked up her briefcase. But Mr. Carter, I want you to understand something. Being a single parent is one of the hardest jobs in the world. There's no manual, no guaranteed path to success. You're going to make mistakes. Everyone does. The difference between a good parent and a bad one isn't whether you mess up. It's whether you learn from it and do better. I'm trying. I can see that, Rachel said. And so can Ben. That's what matters. She walked to the door, then paused. One more thing. If you ever need help, real help, not judgment, there are resources available. Support groups, counseling services, community programs. You don't have to do this alone. Thank you, Liam said. After she left, Ben came out of his room. Is she gone? Yeah. What'd she say? Liam pulled Ben into a hug. She said we're okay. No more visits. Ben hugged him back hard. Good. I didn't like her. Yeah, well, she wasn't so bad, Liam said. She was just doing her job. That night, after Ben was asleep, Liam sat on the couch with a beer he didn't drink and thought about everything that had happened over the past 2 months. He'd gone from barely scraping by to working for an aviation company, from being investigated by Child Services to having the case closed. It felt surreal, like someone else's life. His phone buzzed, a text from Ava. How'd it go with the social worker? Liam typed back. Case closed. We're good. Ava. That's great news. Celebratory lunch tomorrow? Liam. Can't. Fuel system presentation at noon. Ava. Dinner then. My treat. You've earned it. Liam smiled. Okay. Thanks. He set the phone down and finished the beer this time. For the first time in longer than he could remember, things felt manageable. Not perfect, not easy, but manageable. The fuel system presentation the next day went better than expected. Marcus walked the team through the final design, electronic injectors with manual override, redundant monitoring systems, and fail-safes built into every critical component. The investors in attendance asked tough questions, but Marcus had answers for all of them. At one point, an investor named Richard Sorensen pointed at the schematic and said, "This override system, whose idea was that?" Marcus hesitated, then gestured toward Liam. "Carter's. He insisted we build in a backup for the electronics." Sorensen looked at Liam. "You're the consultant? The one who identified the intake problem?" "That's me," Liam said. "What's your background?" "Automotive repair?" Sorensen laughed. "You're kidding." "Nope." "And you designed a fail-safe system for a jet engine fuel injector?" "I suggested it," Liam said. "Marcus and the team did the actual design work." Sorensen shook his head, still smiling. "Ms. Bennett, I don't know where you found this guy, but you should clone him." Ava smiled. "Trust me, I've thought about it." The presentation wrapped up with unanimous approval from the investors. The fuel system redesign would move forward, with production starting in 3 months. As everyone filed out of the conference room, Marcus pulled Liam aside. "That thing Sorensen said, about cloning you," Marcus said. "He's not entirely wrong." Liam raised an eyebrow. "That your way of saying you don't hate me anymore? I never hated you. I just didn't trust you." Marcus paused. "But you've proven yourself. The intake fix, the fail-safe design, the way you think about problems, it's different from how the rest of us approach things. And different isn't bad." "Thanks, Marcus." That almost sounded like a compliment. "Don't get used to it," Marcus said, but he was smiling. That evening, Liam met Ava at a small Italian place on the edge of town. It was the kind of restaurant that didn't look like much from the outside, but had been around for 30 years because the food was incredible. They sat at a corner table, and Ava ordered a bottle of wine that Liam suspected cost more than his weekly grocery budget. "To surviving," Ava said, raising her glass. Liam clinked his glass against hers. "To surviving." They ate in comfortable silence for a while. The pasta was perfect, the kind of meal that made you forget about everything else for a few minutes. Finally, Ava set down her fork and looked at him. "Can I ask you something personal?" she said. "Sure." "Why'd you stick around? After the intake problem was fixed, you could have walked away, taken the paycheck and gone back to your life. But you didn't." Liam thought about it. "I don't know. Maybe because it felt like the first time in years I was doing something that actually mattered. Or maybe I just didn't have anywhere better to be." "I think it's more than that," Ava said. "I think you saw something worth fighting for. Not just the job, but the work itself. The idea that if you do things right, you can actually make a difference." "You give me too much credit." "I don't think I give you enough." Ava refilled his glass. "You saved my company, Liam. Not just the technical fix, but the way you made us all think differently. David's more careful now. Marcus questions his own assumptions. Jessica double-checks things she used to take for granted. You changed the culture, and that's harder than fixing an engine." Liam didn't know what to say to that. "I want to offer you something," Ava said. A permanent position, not as a consultant, but as Director of Quality Assurance. You'd oversee all our safety protocols, review designs before they go into production, and make sure we never cut corners again. Liam stared at her. Ava, I'm not qualified for that. You're more qualified than anyone else I could hire. You see things we miss. You ask questions we don't think to ask. That's exactly what we need. What about Marcus or David? They've got the credentials, the experience. They've also got blind spots, Ava said. Everyone does. But you don't have the same blind spots they do, and that makes you valuable. Liam set down his glass. I need to think about it. Fair enough. But Liam, whatever you decide, I want you to know something. She leaned forward. When I started this company, I thought success meant proving everyone wrong, building something bigger, faster, better than anyone expected. But I was so focused on proving myself that I lost sight of why I started in the first place. I wanted to build aircraft that were safe, reliable, and accessible. I wanted to do something meaningful. You did, not the way I should have. I cut corners. I pushed my team too hard. I convinced myself that the ends justified the means. She paused. And then you showed up and reminded me what actually matters. Not the investors, or the press, or the people who doubted me. The work, the integrity, the responsibility we have to the people who trust us. You would have figured that out eventually. Maybe. But I'm glad I didn't have to do it alone. She raised her glass again. So thank you for seeing what I couldn't, for not walking away when things got hard, for being exactly who you are. Liam smiled. You're getting sentimental. I'm allowed. It's been a long couple of months. They finished dinner and stepped outside into the cool evening air. The streetlights cast long shadows across the pavement, and somewhere in the distance, a plane passed overhead, its lights blinking against the dark sky. You ever think about how crazy this is? Liam said. 2 months ago, I was waiting tables. Now I'm standing here with the CEO of an aviation company talking about quality assurance protocols. Life's weird like that, Ava said. You never know when one decision is going to change everything. Yeah, Liam said. You really don't. They said goodnight, and Liam drove home. Ben was already asleep when he got there, sprawled across his bed with his blanket half on the floor. Liam covered him up and stood there for a moment, watching him breathe. He thought about Ava's offer. Director of Quality Assurance. A title, a salary, a future. Everything he'd been fighting for since the day Ben was born. But it also meant responsibility, pressure, the weight of knowing that if he missed something, people could die. Was he ready for that? He didn't know, but he knew he wanted to try. The next morning, he went into Ava's office before anyone else arrived. I'll take the job, he said. Ava looked up from her laptop. Yeah? Yeah, but I've got conditions. Let's hear them. I work 8 to 4, no exceptions. If Ben needs me, I'm gone, no questions asked. And if I ever think the company's cutting corners or compromising safety, I get final say. You don't overrule me, you don't ignore me, and you don't pressure me to change my mind. Ava smiled. Done. Just like that? Just like that. Those are exactly the conditions I was hoping you'd ask for. She stood and extended her hand. Welcome to the team, Director Carter. Liam shook her hand. This is going to be weird. Probably, but weird's been working out pretty well for us so far. Over the next few weeks, Liam settled into his new role. It was strange at first, having an office, attending executive meetings, being introduced as a director instead of a consultant. But the work itself felt right. He reviewed designs, questioned assumptions, pushed back when something didn't make sense. And slowly, the team started to trust him. Marcus came to him with a fuel pump design that looked flawless on paper. Liam spent 2 hours staring at it before spotting a potential failure mode in the pressure relief valve. Marcus redesigned it. Jessica brought him a manufacturing protocol that seemed efficient and cost-effective. Liam pointed out that it skipped a critical quality check. Jessica added it back in. David presented a new engine configuration that promised 15% better fuel efficiency. Liam asked what would happen if one of the new components failed. David ran the simulations and found a cascading failure risk. They redesigned the system with better isolation. It wasn't glamorous work. It wasn't the kind of thing that made headlines or impressed investors. But it was the work that mattered, the difference between an aircraft that was good enough and one that was truly safe. One evening, about 6 weeks into his new role, Liam picked Ben up from the after-school program and took him out for pizza. They sat in a booth by the window, and Ben demolished 3 slices while Liam nursed a soda. "Dad?" Ben said, mouth half full of cheese. "Yeah? Are you happy?" Liam looked at him. "What kind of question is that?" Ben swallowed. "I don't know. You just seem different lately, less stressed or something." Liam thought about it. "Yeah, I guess I am happy, or at least happier than I was." "Because of the new job?" "Partly, but mostly because I'm spending more time with you." Ben smiled. "That's corny." "It's also true." They finished their pizza and drove home. That night, Liam helped Ben with his science project, a model of the solar system that was due the next day. They spent 2 hours gluing styrofoam balls to wire and painting them to look like planets. It was messy and chaotic and completely ridiculous, and Liam loved every minute of it. When Ben finally went to bed, Liam sat on the couch and looked around the small, cramped house. It was still the same place it had always been, old, worn, held together by hope and duct tape. But it didn't feel the same. It felt like home. His phone buzzed, a text from Ava. "Got a minute?" Liam: "Sure, what's up?" Ava: "Just wanted to say thank you for everything. This company wouldn't exist without you." Liam: "Pretty sure it would. You'd have figured it out." Ava: "Maybe, but I'm glad I didn't have to." Liam smiled and set the phone down. He thought about the past few months, the fear, the uncertainty, the moments when everything felt like it was falling apart. And he thought about the people who'd helped him through it. Ava, who'd given him a chance when no one else would. Jessica and David, and even Marcus, who'd pushed him to be better. Rachel Mendez, who'd forced him to confront his own shortcomings. And Ben, who'd reminded him what he was fighting for in the first place. None of it had been easy. None of it had been perfect. But it had been enough. A few months later, Liam stood in the hangar and watched as the first aircraft with the redesigned fuel system took off on its maiden flight. The engines roared, smooth and powerful, and the plane climbed into the clear blue sky without a single hesitation. Ava stood next to him, arms crossed, watching with the kind of intensity that came from knowing everything was riding on this moment. "It's going to work," Liam said. "How do you know?" "Because we did it right this time." The plane circled the airfield once, twice, then came in for a perfect landing. The pilot climbed out grinning and gave them a thumbs up. Ava let out a breath. "We did it." "Yeah," Liam said. "We did." Later that day, Liam drove to Ben's school to pick him up. Ben came running out with a paper in his hand, waving it in the air. "Dad! Dad, look!" Liam took the paper. It was Ben's science test, marked with a bright red A at the top. "That's great, buddy," Liam said. "And Mrs. Patterson said, I'm doing way better in class. She said she's proud of me." Liam pulled Ben into a hug. "I'm proud of you too." They drove home together, Ben chattering about his day while Liam listened. And for the first time in a long time, Liam felt like everything was exactly where it was supposed to be. That evening, after Ben was asleep, Liam sat on the porch with a cup of coffee and looked up at the sky. Somewhere up there, planes were flying, planes he'd helped make safer, planes that wouldn't fail because someone had asked the right questions and refused to accept easy answers. He thought about the lesson he'd learned over the past few months, the truth that had taken root somewhere deep in his chest. Success wasn't about being perfect. It wasn't about having all the answers or never making mistakes. It was about showing up, doing the work, and caring enough to get it right. It was about listening when everyone else was too busy talking. It was about asking the hard questions, even when you didn't want to hear the answers. It was about trusting your instincts, even when the experts told you were wrong. And most of all, it was about knowing what mattered. Not the title, not the paycheck, not the recognition, just the work itself, and the people it affected, and the responsibility that came with seeing what others missed. Liam wasn't a genius. He wasn't a hero. He was just a guy who'd paid attention at the right moment and refused to walk away when things got hard. But sometimes that was enough. Sometimes being willing to listen was more valuable than knowing all the answers. Sometimes caring about the outcome mattered more than having the credentials. Sometimes the person who saved the day wasn't the one with the most experience or the best education. It was the one who refused to ignore the quiet voice saying something's wrong. Liam finished his coffee and went inside. Tomorrow there'd be more work, more designs to review, more questions to ask, more problems to solve. And he'd show up for all of it, The same way he showed up for Ben, the same way he showed up for Ava and the team. Not because he was perfect, not because he had all the answers, but because someone had to. And this time, that someone was him. And in a world that often rewarded credentials over competence, polish over substance, and confidence over caution, maybe that was the lesson worth remembering. That expertise wasn't just about what you knew, it was about what you noticed. That sometimes the most important voice in the room was the one everyone almost didn't listen to. That the difference between disaster and success often came down to someone being willing to say, wait, something's not right. Liam Carter had been that person. And in doing so, he'd changed more than just a company. He'd changed himself. He turned off the lights and checked on Ben one last time. The kid was sleeping soundly, his breathing steady and calm. Liam stood in the doorway for a moment, watching him, feeling the weight of everything they'd been through and the lightness of knowing they'd made it to the other side. "We're okay," he whispered. And for the first time in years, he actually believed it. 6 months later, on a Saturday morning when the sky was clear and the air smelled like cut grass and gasoline, Ava showed up at Liam's house unannounced. She was driving a car he didn't recognize, something sleek and expensive that looked out of place in his neighborhood. Ben answered the door. "Dad, it's your boss!" Liam came out of the kitchen, dish towel in hand. "Ava, what are you doing here?" "I need to show you something," she said. "Both of you. Come on." "Now?" "Now." Ben looked at Liam, who shrugged. "Go get your shoes." They piled into Ava's car and drove out toward the airfield. Ben sat in the back, asking questions Ava deflected with vague answers. When they pulled through the gate, Liam saw something different on the tarmac. A new hangar, freshly painted, with the Aeropulse logo gleaming in the morning sun. "What's this?" Liam asked. Ava parked and got out without answering. Liam and Ben followed her inside. The hangar was massive, filled with equipment and workspace that made the old facility look like a garage. In the center sat a prototype aircraft, unlike anything Liam had seen before. It was smaller, more streamlined, with design elements that suggested efficiency and safety in equal measure. "This is the future of Aeropulse," Ava said. "Fully redesigned from the ground up. Every system built with redundancy. Every component tested beyond certification requirements. No shortcuts, no compromises." Liam walked around the aircraft, taking it in. "This is incredible." "It's what we should have built from the beginning," Ava said. "And it exists because you taught us how to think differently." She pulled an envelope from her pocket and handed it to Liam. "Open it." Inside was a letter on official company letterhead. Liam scanned it quickly, then read it again more slowly. It was an offer, not just a title change, but equity in the company, a real stake in Aeropulse's future. "Ava, I can't accept this." "Why not?" "Because I'm just doing my job. You're doing more than that, and you know it." She crossed her arms. "Liam, I'm not offering this out of gratitude. I'm offering it because you've earned it. You've changed how this company operates, and that's worth more than any salary I could pay you." Liam looked at Ben, who was running his hand along the aircraft's wing, his eyes wide with wonder. "What do you think, buddy?" Ben turned. "I think it's cool. Can I sit in it?" Ava laughed. "Not yet, but someday." Liam folded the letter and put it back in the envelope. "I need time to think about it." "Take all the time you need," Ava said. "The offer's not going anywhere." They spent the rest of the morning at the hangar. Ava walked them through the new design, explaining the changes, the improvements, the lessons learned from everything that had gone wrong before. Ben asked questions that surprised Liam with their insight, and Ava answered each one seriously, never talking down to him. On the drive home, Ben was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Dad, are we rich now?" Liam laughed. "No, buddy, we're not rich. But Ava's giving you part of the company. She's offering. I haven't said yes." "Why not?" "Because it's complicated." Ben thought about that. "Is it because you don't want things to change?" Liam glanced in the rearview mirror. "Maybe. A little." "Things are already different, though," Ben said. "You're happy now. I can tell." Liam didn't know what to say to that. The kid was right. Things had changed, and most of those changes had been good. But accepting Ava's offer meant committing to this life, this company, this future. It meant believing that what he'd built could last. That night, After Ben was in bed, Liam sat at the kitchen table with the letter spread out in front of him. He read it 3 more times, looking for the catch, the fine print, the thing that would make it too good to be true. But there was nothing, just a straightforward offer from someone who valued what he brought to the table. He thought about how far he'd come. From waiting tables and scraping by, to saving a company he'd never heard of, to being offered a piece of something real. It felt impossible, but it had happened anyway. His phone rang. "Ava, did I wake you?" she asked. "No, I was just thinking." "About the offer?" "Yeah." There was a pause. "Liam, I need to tell you something. When I started Aeropulse, I thought success meant building something that proved everyone wrong. That showed I could do it better, faster, smarter than anyone expected. But I was measuring the wrong things. I was so focused on winning that I forgot why I wanted to win in the first place." "And why was that?" "Because I wanted to build something that mattered, something that made the world safer, even in some small way, and I lost sight of that until you reminded me." Liam leaned back in his chair. "I didn't do anything special. You did exactly what was special. You cared about getting it right more than you cared about looking smart. You asked the questions nobody else wanted to ask. You trusted your instincts even when the experts told you to shut up and sit down." She paused. "The world needs more people like that. I need more people like that. So I'm asking you to stay. Not just as an employee, but as a partner." "I'm not a businessman, Ava." "Good. We've got plenty of those. What we need is someone who sees through the noise and focuses on what actually matters." Liam looked at the letter again. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything." "What happens when I mess up?" "Because I will. Eventually I'm going to miss something or make a bad call or—" "Then we fix it," Ava said. "Same as we've been doing. Liam, I'm not offering you this because I think you're perfect. I'm offering it because you're exactly the kind of imperfect we need. Someone who knows he doesn't have all the answers, but keeps asking questions anyway." After they hung up, Liam sat in the quiet kitchen for a long time. He thought about all the mistakes he'd made over the years, all the jobs he'd lost, all the times he'd felt like he was failing. And he thought about the moment at the airfield when he'd heard that rattle and refused to ignore it. That moment had changed everything. Not because he was special, but because he'd paid attention when it mattered. The next morning, he called Ava. "I'll take the offer, but I've got one more condition." "What's that?" "We set up a scholarship fund for kids like Ben, kids whose parents are struggling, who need help with after-school programs or school supplies or just someone to believe in them." There was silence on the other end. Then Ava said, "I love that idea." "Yeah?" "Yeah, let's do it." 3 weeks later, Liam signed the paperwork that made him a partner in Aeropulse Aviation. There was no ceremony, no big announcement, just him, Ava, and a lawyer in a small office, going through page after page of legal language that mostly went over Liam's head. When it was done, Ava shook his hand. "Welcome to ownership." "Feels weird." "It should. You're not just responsible for yourself anymore. You're responsible for everyone who works here and everyone who flies our aircraft." "No pressure, right?" Ava smiled. "None at all." That evening, Liam took Ben out for dinner at the same pizza place they'd gone to months ago. They sat in the same booth by the window, and Ben ordered the same 3 slices he always did. "So you're really doing this?" Ben asked. "Looks like it." "Are you scared?" Liam thought about it. "A little, but mostly I'm excited." "Good," Ben said. "You should be excited. You're doing something important." "So are you, buddy. School, homework, all of it. That's important too." Ben made a face. "It doesn't feel important." "It is, though. You're learning how to think, how to solve problems, how to keep going even when things are hard. Those are the skills that actually matter." "Like the skills you used to fix the engines?" "Exactly like that." They finished their pizza and drove home through the quiet streets. Liam thought about the scholarship fund they were setting up, about the kids it would help, about the difference it might make in lives that needed it. He thought about second chances and new beginnings, and the strange winding path that had brought him here. None of it had been planned. None of it had been smooth. But it had been real, and it had been worth it. Because in the end, what mattered wasn't having all the answers or being the smartest person in the room. What mattered was caring enough to pay attention, brave enough to speak up, and stubborn enough to keep going when everyone else wanted to give up. That was the lesson Liam had learned. That was the truth he'd carry forward. And as he pulled into the driveway of his small, worn house, the same house he'd lived in through all the struggles and setbacks and moments of doubt, he realized something. He didn't need a bigger house or a fancier car or any of the things he'd once thought would make him feel successful. He had work that mattered. He had a son who was happy. He had people who trusted him and a future that felt possible. That was enough. That was more than enough. That was everything.